Hi, my name is Patricia Castorena. My parents immigrated from Zacatecas, Mexico in the late 1970s. My dad grew up in a ranch called Felipe Carrillo Puerto, and my mom grew up in a neighboring town called Loreto. They didn't meet until maybe their mid to late 20s and got married, and my dad decided that he would be bringing my mom to the United States. She really didn't know that until her wedding day. And the reason I know that story is because my sisters went back to Mexico City to visit family when we were very young, and they showed my mom's family showed my sisters an album, and it showed my mom crying at her wedding. And when we asked her, why were you crying? She said, oh, well, that was the day your dad told me we would be leaving very soon after our wedding to come to the United States. And that transition was very difficult for my mom. I think, like most immigrants, my parents, well, more my father, decided to come to the United States because of the opportunities and for a better life. At that point, my dad must have been, I don't know his exact age, but he must have been in his early 30s, maybe 32. He had already been here through the last stages of the Bracero program, had been in Chicago, and I think he recognized the opportunities that were here. Unfortunately, like many other immigrants, he wasn't able to really fulfill the promises of this country. He worked in landscaping, gardening most of his life, had trouble with alcoholism issues. And so life for us growing here was challenging in the sense that we were low income and also had to struggle with, the merging identity issues of being Mexican, but also growing up in this country and interpreting for our parents because they didn't have the same educational opportunities that many of us have here and are required to, right? We have to go to school until we're of legal age. My dad never went to school and never learned to read or write, and my mom went up to the 3rd grade. She got pulled out to basically take care of her siblings. But she did learn to read and write, which is something that is great. It is interesting to see how much my experience in terms of what I do now has been shaped by what my parents went through. I think I wouldn't be the person I am today if it hadn't been for their struggles. And so I'm very mindful and proud of what they went through, the good and the bad, to get me to the place where I'm at today. They were able to benefit from the 1986 amnesty law, and they became permanent residents in 1989. But prior to that, they actually had to do 40 hours of community service and take classes and whatnot. And they took those courses at the Center for Employment Training, which is known as CET. And that is an organization that provides vocational training and educational programs to the immigrant community, mainly in San Jose, Latino community, although they don't exclude by race. It is a nationwide organization, but my parents attended courses to learn English and the history of the United States to be able to become permanent residents. And I remember playing there as a child in the courtyard, and back then it was just dirt. And those are very vivid memories because I enjoyed them. I knew my parents were in class, even though I didn't understand the significance of them being in class and that they were learning. It was interesting to be in that environment where I had to wait for them and play. And so I remember how fun that was. And after I went to college, I went to law school, I graduated and passed the bar. I worked in different fields, but ultimately I ended working at CET's immigration program as a legal services manager. And so in many ways it was like my life coming full circle, honoring my parents' background and their struggles, but also continuing to serve that immigrant population that to this day continues to need the same services my parents needed back in the 80s. And so it was at CET when I came to the recognition that in order to continue providing these services in a different, meaningful way, because the work CET does, the work Siren does, other organizations, is very meaningful. But what that meant for me was doing it in a different channel, with a different capacity. And so I decided to open my own law practice where I can serve all immigrants which I did prior to this, but it's a different capacity. And so And now I'm in a position where I'm also a business owner and I can provide legal services to individuals. And I wouldn't be in that place if it hadn't been for what my parents went through as immigrants to this country. And even though my parents are not fluent in English, they very much understand a lot of what my sisters and I talk about, which I find to be very funny because they don't give that away. But my parents, their struggle to be in this country, although it didn't lead to the successes that other immigrants have, like my sisters and I are the successes for them. And so I'm very proud of this country and the opportunity that it provides.